First item on our agenda is roll call. Member Bluestein. Here. Member Laval.
Here.
Member Vincent Camerata.
Here.
Member James Cervoni.
Joseph. James. Here's Joe James.
Vice Chair Joseph James.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard from Ann Raponi.
She's supposed to be here, Mr. Chairman.
She is. You spoke to her?
Yeah.
Okay, but she's absent. Maybe she'll come
Yeah,
later.
she's-
And I'm Andrew B. DeSantis, Chairman of the Revere Conservation Commission. This is our first meeting of 2013. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes of November 7th, 2012. Those are included in your package. Do I have a motion
I
to
so
approve?
move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Vincent Camerata. Second by Vice Chair Joseph James. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Voted in the affirmative unanimously. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take the next two items up as together for public hearing. That's DEP file number 0610632, a notice of intent for NRD compensation with salt marsh restoration, Route 1A and MBTA right-of-way by the City of Revere, and public hearing DEP file 0610633, a notice of intent for the Ram Mitigation Salt Marsh Restoration Project, Oak Island, Revere by KHB Venture LLC. As you looked at your packet, you'll see there on adjacent pieces of property, and Les Smith from Messalon Associates prepared to present on both of them at the same time. So do I have a agreement from the commission to do that? Oh, there's Ann. And recognize member Ann Raponi is present. And you'll make a motion to open both?
Yes, please.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Who's second first, Vinny? Joseph?
Joseph.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Andy.
Yeah, Les, the floor is yours. Press the talk button, so you'll be broadcast, and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much, Andy. Les Smith, Epsilon Associates. I'm here to present the two notice of intents before you right now for the RAM and NRD projects on the Oak Island Salt Marsh Restoration in Revere, Mass. Next, please. This is a project outline. First, I'll give you an overview of the project. And
Les, let me interrupt you for just a second. Would you explain what NRD is rather than using acronyms and RAM?
I'll be doing that in a few seconds.
Okay. Okay.
Here we go.
Hey.
I'll give the project overview and the benefits of the projects, talk about the existing conditions out there, describe our proposed project, and then give you a review of the regulations and how we meet those regulatory standards. Next, please. You're probably all very familiar with the location of the Oak Island Salt Marsh. We're working between Route 1A and the commuter rail tracks, adjacent to Diamond Creek, which flows right alongside the area we're working. And Diamond Creek is a tributary of the Pines River, which flows out to Broad Sound. Next, please. Our project location, shown in the stipple there, is within the Rumney Marshes Area of Critical Environmental Concern, ACEC. Project overview. The RAM portion is a mitigation of 4.38 acres, and the NRD is 1.29 acres. Now we'll get into describing what these acronyms mean. Next. Okay, the RAM is a salt marsh restoration being undertaken as mitigation for work that occurred over in Everett, a former coal tar processing facility. And that was remediation. It was undertaken as a release abatement measure. So RAM, release abatement measure, under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, the MCP. That project involved dredging 72,000 cubic yards of sediment and disposal of most of that in a confined disposal facility, or CDF. The CDF construction required filling of 1.9 acres, mostly subtidal flats, and we need to do mitigation for that 1.9 acres of filling, and the 4.38 acres of salt marsh restoration has been agreed to as the proper mitigation for that RAM project. Next, please. The other project before you is the NRD Compensation Project, which is a natural resources damages compensation project being undertaken associated with federal requirements pertaining to, again, the former coal tar processing facility. And this is proposed, this NRD Compensation Project is being done under the purview of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, as a natural resource trustee. Eric Hutchins from NOAA is sitting right behind me over here. So if you have any questions about NOAA's involvement, he'll be happy to chime in. The City of Revere is the applicant on the NRD Compensation Project working with NOAA. The NRD involves 1.29 acres of salt marsh restoration. Next, please. There are a number of project benefits. Recolonization of the marsh with native Spartina alterniflora will replace the invasive Phragmites. This will bring about increased food chain support. The detritus from the salt marsh gets exported to the adjacent Rumney marshes and to the adjacent marine areas, and it feeds the food chain basically. It will also involve fill removal, which will increase the flood storage capacity that is associated with the freshwater runoff. Will actually increase the flood storage capacity. So during freshwater flooding events, there'll be less flooding. Improved habitat quality, promoting fisheries and shellfish in the Rumney marshes. Reduction of pollution in the estuary, because salt marshes tend to remove excess nutrients and heavy metals that are carried by surface water runoff from the adjacent uplands. Next, please. We're creating an additional tidal creek. So this will restore a more natural tidal flow pattern and fisheries resources to the marsh. We'll have an enhanced mosquito control by having improved tidal flushing. It'll restore habitat for killfish, and they like mosquitoes. They tend to eat the mosquitoes. There'll be a decreased threat of fire. Phragmites has a lot of growth form, dead leaves and stems that are a big fire risk. So we're in taking the Phragmites out of there, we'll be decreasing the threat of fire. Improving scenic quality. Phragmites stands are very tall and they obstruct the view. Decreased cost to the city. They'll no longer need to mow Phragmites annually. And lastly, uptake of CO2, carbon dioxide, which has been talked about as CO2 uptake helps to contribute to reducing the rate of global warming. Next, please. There's been extensive coordination on the project. We mentioned NOAA before, National Marine Fisheries Service within NOAA. Been working very closely with them, working closely with the Environmental Protection Agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, Mass Coastal Zone Management, the Division of Fish and Game, their Division of Ecological Restoration, the Northeast Mass Mosquito Control District. They're the ones that in the past have come in and mowed the Phragmites, and of course with the city of Revere. Existing conditions out on the salt marsh. Here's a plan view. On the left-hand side is Diamond Creek, and then you see the average elevation in there is 3.2 feet on National Geodetic Vertical Datum. The average elevation in the NRD area is 3.1 feet. Next, please. May take a few seconds to sync again. Here we go. Next, please. Okay, we this is not working. Okay, 2 tie gates that were placed out there. One you can see is over by the railroad track, and the other is over by Route 1A. Next, please. And here are the measurements that were taken, shown graphically. And you can see the elevations ranged from almost up to 3 to -3 over the course of this several-month investigation. Next, please. This is a blow-up of the June portion of the study, about a week's worth, showing similar elevations. Next, please. I'll go back to that one second. Yeah, in doing that study, we concluded that mean high water is about elevation 2.4 on NGVD, and mean low water is at -2.4 on NGVD. Next, please. The city has a operation and maintenance plan for the electric sluice gate, which is used to control the water level in the marsh. And this O&M plan specifies the operating procedures and emergency procedures in advance of a storm forecast. There's an advisory committee that's been established for developing the management approaches and operational guidelines. And the City of Revere Department of Public Works has been responsible for the operation and maintenance adjustment of the tie gate under the direction of this advisory committee. Next, please. So our design approach is for the RAM mitigation project to have a design surface elevation of between 1 and 1.5 NGVD. So that will allow it to be flooded by those high tides that we looked at earlier in the study. And 13,000 cubic yards of fill will be removed to get us down to that elevation. For the NRD Compensation Project, the design surface elevation is between 1.5 and 2 on NGVD. And that's a smaller project. There's 3,000 cubic yards of fill removed for that project. There'll be a single feeder creek for both projects. There'll be narrow creeks with steep side slopes, about 1-on-1, and the slopes will be adjusted to make sure that the bank is stable along the side slopes of the creek. The depth is about 4 feet at the confluence of this creek with Diamond Creek, and it's about 10 feet at the border between the RAM and the NRD areas. We're going to be having sediment traps and qual logs. I'll show you some examples of those. And staging and offloading will occur off Intervale Street. Next, please. So this is, again, another plan view. And you can see we show the tidal creek that we're constructing with several limbs of that tidal creek, getting pretty much allowing the full area of the salt marsh to have good connection with Diamond Creek. We show the sediment traps that we're going to be locating in the main creek, and we also show the compost filter sock that will surround the creek areas. Next, please. A typical cross-section through the creek looks like this. You see the water level at top. The final grade is shown with that arrow, and the width of the creek is between 2 and 4 feet. Next, please. This is both plan view and cross-section view of the sediment trap. You can see that the qua logs are located on the side slopes, and the qua log that crosses the channel will intercept sediment coming down the tidal creek. Next, please. The compost filter sock, which is going to be on the side of the creek, basically looks like this. It'll be installed with 2x2 wooden stakes. Next, please. These are natural materials. They'll just decay with time after the project goes forward. The staging for the RAM is in the NRD area. We're going to be working from left to right in this figure, or south to north. So we're doing the RAM portion of the project first. Next, please. And the staging for the NRD will be further out at the end of Intervale Street, as shown on the far right. The truck traffic will...
Les, could you just go back to that slide for a second?
Sure.
On the right-hand bottom of the screen, is that Doc Kagan's property? What's shown on the block there, backing up to Intervale Street?
I'm not sure. Whose project?
The used auto cars?
I'm not sure if that's... You familiar with that tour, whether that's that?
The larger box below the shaded box.
Lower right. Yeah. This one here?
Right. That one that you're pointing to right now. What does that represent? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Well, I don't. Who owns that lot, Andy?
Doc Kagan?
I'm not sure.
Well, that's Intervale Street that's above it, right?
It is. It's the termination of Intervale Street. It may in fact be the paper portion of Intervale Street.
Oh, okay.
Where it extends
So
out into the marsh.
His property may actually be further to the right than
I think it
That's why I
is.
was trying to give people an idea of exactly where you were.
Yeah, I think it is further. You want to chime in?
Just one comment, Eric. It's all on town, city of Revere property, all over the world.
It's that's all. Everything that's shown there is City of Revere.
Yes.
Okay, so Kagan's would be to the right of that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Next, please. Here's the site layout and the truck transportation plan. Pretty simple, just getting out to 1A. Next, please. We're going to have a temporary haul or access road, and this could be constructed several different ways. We show an example of it being constructed with swamp mats here, but it could also be constructed with gravel fill on geotextile. It'll depend upon the contractor, and then the approval by the applicant of what the actual technique will be. But basically something to spread the load so you're not having equipment sinking into the softer sediments of the marsh. Next, please. In terms of truck trips, thought you might be interested in that. With the RAM project with 13,000 cubic yards and assuming a truck capacity of about 15 cubic yards, there'll be a total of 850 to 950 total truck trips. That's assuming about 20 trips per day. That's 100 trips over a 5-day week or 120 trips over a 6-day week. So it's going to take about 8 weeks to do the RAM project. For the NRD project with 3,000 cubic yards, total truck trips will be 200. Same assumptions in terms of trips per day, 20. So 5-day week, 100, 6-day week, 120. So it's going to take about 2 weeks to do that project.
Unless you have a time for the operating time, you have a time schedule for when the work will start and when it's going to end per day. Work days. I know they mentioned about maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
Okay, next I'm going to talk about the Wetlands Protection Act, which everybody's here to obviously focus on. This project qualifies as a limited project under the Wetlands Protection Act. That's section 310 CMR 1053-4, because we're improving the capacity, the natural capacity of resource area to protect the interests of the Act. The wetland resource areas that we're dealing with, I mentioned the ACEC earlier, the Area of Critical Environmental Concern. That's a overlay resource area, obviously covering a lot of these other resource areas as well. Salt marsh, of course. Land under the ocean. We're not doing any work under the land under the ocean. That's below mean low water. Land subject to flooding. That's freshwater flooding. And then land subject to coastal storm flowage. That's saltwater flooding. Riverfront area. And there are no mapped natural heritage endangered species habitat out here. Next, please. So in terms of the ACEC, we're going to be basically meeting that standard because we're promoting storm damage prevention, flood control, prevention of pollution, protection of fisheries, protection of land containing shellfish, and wildlife habitat. Next. Salt marsh. All of the salt marsh performance standards promote the protection of salt marsh. Or, go back one more, please. Or they promote the restoration of salt marshes. And so we're going to be meeting all of those standards. Next, please. Land under the ocean. Again, we're not doing work in land under the ocean. There'll be no fill or any other work there. Next, please. Land subject to flooding. Again, land subject to flooding is freshwater flooding. And by removing fill, we'll be providing compensatory storage that will benefit the residents in the area and the city. Next, please. Land subject to coastal, I think you jumped ahead at one. Yeah. Land subject to coastal storm flowage, that will be controlled by the tide gate. And again, I mentioned there's an operation and management plan that the city will be following to make sure that nobody gets flooded out during storm events. Next, please. That shaded area is a riverfront area. However, since we're getting a Chapter 91 license or permit, we're exempt from riverfront area requirements. Next, please. But we meet all their standards anyways. And that is the final slide in the presentation. We're available for any questions and answers.
Thank you, Les. Questions?
Yes,
Member
Mr.
Lavelle.
Chairman, thank you. Would you please give us a little bit more detail on where the fill is actually going to be removed and where it's going to be taken from to the fill? You mentioned a couple of times fill removal.
Fill will be taken out, skimmed off of the entire salt marsh surface. So we'll be going out there and skimming that whole surface down in elevation so that we can get water on top of there during high tide events. That promotes salt marsh growth. So the entire marsh out there will be
Is this
skimmed.
also to remove the Phragmites?
Yes, and it also, the Phragmites, rhizomes and whatnot will be removed. So we won't have the invasive Phragmites in most of the marsh area. There may be still a little fringe of Phragmites. It's really impossible to get it out completely, but the bulk of the marsh will be Phragmites free.
You'll be taking out, what, 1.5 feet in vertical depth, something of that order?
Yes.
Do you know if it'll generate any smell when you do that?
There probably will be some minor smell because salt marshes tend to have hydrogen sulfide, and so they can smell a little bit, yeah. But no more than you'd get from a typical tidal flat when it's exposed.
Low tide.
Yeah, at low tide, exactly. And the fill, we don't have a location, but it will obviously need to be disposed of according to Mass DEP requirements. And we're obviously getting permits from Mass DEP, two of those from Mass DEP.
Have you done any inquiries on that?
No, we've looked at the nature of the fill in terms of the sediment composition, and it looks like it's able to be disposed of in most locations.
Yeah, I know from doing utility work less in the city of Chelsea, it's becoming tougher and tougher to get rid of excavated fill materials. More expensive, consequently.
Yeah, it used to be a lot easier before a lot of the landfills got covered, capped.
And my second question, in regards to the location of the sediment traps, when I was looking at that, it looked like they weren't necessarily the most, from a schematic, it didn't look like the most judicious place to put the two traps. One of them is only on one little tongue of area, and the other one's a little bit halfway down the base. I was wondering what made you decide on the location.
Well, actually, our design engineer initially didn't feel that sediment traps were even required, and so they're actually utilizing sediment traps at the recommendation of the Environmental Protection Agency, and they were the ones that selected the location, I believe. And I believe they selected it kind of central in the creek systems, in that one feeder creek that comes in.
Now, is this only for the duration of the project?
Yes, they will basically decay with time. They're koa logs, and they're a natural material that will just decay. And there's probably not going to be very much sediment deposited, underneath of these.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
What's the point of having the sediment traps if the sediment is just going to build up in that location and concentrate?
The purpose is to try and keep the sediment from washing into Diamond Creek. Try and minimize the amount of sediment that washes downstream. But again, our design engineer didn't really feel it was a critical element. It was just added at the request of the EPA.
Just another question. I didn't see in your plans any protocols for following up on the restoration efforts. Is there any plan to sort of look at the effect of this project after it's completed?
Maybe I can let Eric speak a little bit about that, because he's going to be more involved with it after it's actually constructed.
Introduce yourself, please, Eric.
Yes, Eric Hutchins. I'm with the National. Is that on? Yeah. I'm with the National Marine Fisheries Service in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I've been actually working with the city of Revere now for, I think it goes about 14 years now, working with Joe Maglione in particular and Frank Stringy and others at this site long before these folks even got involved. So I'm extremely familiar with the site, all its perimeter. Insofar as long-term monitoring at the site, we are certainly going to be doing some follow-up on the area. At this point, there is not a definitive monitoring plan. If there is some aspects to that this commission's looking for, certainly both parties here are amenable to that. We're expecting it. The elevations of water in here are going to be, for all practical purposes, conducive to just Spartina alterniflora, which is low salt marsh plants. So that's the only plant that's going to be growing in here, which is good. That never burns unless someone turns the tide gate off all summer long. So at least that aspect of it will be gone forever. It won't be high marsh Spartina patents. So if the commission has some particular standards that they want looked at, by all means, both parties are amenable to that.
So you're not doing any plantings or anything to encourage Spartina growth?
Well, an experimental pilot spot was about 6 years ago now. Mosquito control for the city of Revere actually did some channel work right next to the tide gate, and at the recommendation of EPA and the Fisheries Service and the state, they actually lowered the elevation down to about elevation 1. That kind of range, very similar to the elevations that we are targeting. And it's Phragmites now because the tide gate broke and it had a couple of years to grow back. But following that little island that he's pointing to, maybe 100 feet long, I can't remember exactly, it completely regrew in with Spartina alterniflora on its own. So there's an unbelievably good, you've got the best seed source probably almost in Massachusetts with Rumney Marsh next to you. So there's a very strong seed source here. And because of the area so confined with the railroad bed, the road, and structures, there's not a lot of fetch here, so there's a lot of ability for plants to take on their own. So that was the plan at this point, was to follow its growth. And that's going to be certainly my personal and professional interest, is watching the growth pattern at the site.
Yeah, I guess just one concern is if something were to happen, like the tide gate were to break again and Phragmites just recolonize, it would sort of be pointless for this project to have happened. So I think some sort of follow-up would maybe beneficial for our consideration.
Right. Yep. It was a combination, to be honest with you. The original tide, well, there's been multiple tide gates there. There was a tide gate put in around, I can't remember the exact year, it was about 9 years ago now. And that one, robbers stole a bunch of the parts off it. They actually drove down there and took bolt cutters and wrenches and destroyed it. And the city of Revere, and I worked with them to do an RFP for engineering and design, working with the Department of Public Works and Planning, designed, and Arcadis actually paid for the entire cost of the new tide gate for the city of Revere. So you actually have a new state-of-the-art tide gate there that replaces the old one. It also comes with I wouldn't call it necessarily state-of-the-art, but a very effective chain link fence. I think it even has barbed wire on top. and the city's keeping a much closer look on it. So it is to the city's benefit, even more so than ours, to A, keep the gate closed so someone can't drive down there with a truck again, and to maintain it, because that tide gate provides extensively more flood control than you ever had at this location. And this project even adds to the flood control benefits for the city of Revere. For every cubic yard that's removed, that's one more cubic yard that this basin can hold that doesn't run down the streets. So it won't solve all the problems, but it's that much more storage. And the principle of this tide gate is, matter of fact, the protocol would be tomorrow, DPW will go shut I think it's closed right now. They may have done it today. The protocol is, with an impending storm, at the discretion of the city of Revere, go shut that tide gate down. The agencies don't care if the salt marsh doesn't get water for a couple of days. Life and safety comes first. That tide gate shut will prevent, and if it's shut at low tide or high tide, it's designed to let the water out. And then you've gained every bit of that salt marsh plain and the creeks for storage. So if water comes over the seawall, which I certainly did in 78 and maybe 91, so if you get salt water over the boulevard and it fills this basin up, you now have more storage. Or if you have a significant rain event in spring, fall, or summer, which happens a number of times, this now provides more storage. So a lot of the benefits, there's a big variety of benefits, but this gate will be engaged tomorrow. If not, it already is right now. Because for those of you that don't know, I just got an email. I work the Weather Service works within my agency, and as of 2:30 this afternoon, they're calling the storm as potential historic proportions, with 80-mile-an-hour winds on the coast, and Saturday's an 11.5-foot tide, which is one of the highest tides of this month. A lot of the scenario that's potentially being painted is not that different from 78 right now. I don't think that's going to happen, but they're saying 80-mile-an-hour winds, 20 to 30-foot seas on Friday night and Saturday, and it's one of the highest tides of the month. So you will be really glad that that new tide gate's operational.
Just one more quick, maintenance. You
Yep.
mentioned maintenance. Is that to our city to maintain that tide gate, you're saying?
The city has been given the tide gate, for lack of a better word, for no cost to themselves.
Okay.
It is certainly my agency's hope, and these folks will be long gone, that the city takes care of what's been given to them, because it's providing everybody in this basin additional flood control. You've received significant federal and state and some nonprofit grants to the city of Revere to the tune of about $1.8 million in the past decade to install that new culvert, the new tide gate, and a management plan, and all of the agencies have been supporting the city of Revere, an extensive amount of money. At some point, the city of Revere has to take care of what's been given to them, and kind of at the follow-up of this, there is no funding from us to take care of your tide gate that's been given to you.
Well, we got a good public works department. I'm sure they'll maintain it properly.
And I will tell you that Joe Maglione knows this thing inside and out.
Thanks.
Just one more question about the gate. Do you know if the operation and management plan will have to be modified after this project?
Hopefully, it may be slightly, but one thing that does need to be done is after any excavation, the operation and the transducers will be what are the data collectors will be looked at again, because by definition there's a chance that removing all of the fill, the gate needs to be left open a little bit longer just to maintain that elevation. So when they're done, the data loggers need to be reset and confirm that the elevation is being reached. And one thing that needs to be made clear, no part of this project is increasing the water level prior to it was already permitted and already in place. So it's kind of a rare event to actually be involved with a project like this where no one's proposing to increase the water level. The only outcome of this is the potential to actually lower it during storm events. So the permit actually says 2.5 NGVD. We all felt and conferred that we'd rather go a little bit lower. So the water elevation being kept in there is about 1/10 of a foot lower than was originally permitted, to be a little bit more risk averse.
Thank you.
Eric and Les, I haven't heard from Ed Reiner on this project at all. I'm a little surprised. Has Ed opined anything?
Yes, I've actually been hand in hand with Ed at this site for 14 years. I could hit him on the head. He dragged me into this project 14 years ago,
Okay.
and I've been yelling at him ever since, because then it fell on my lap, and I kind of have taken the lead with NOAA funding and supporting the project with some of our funding that's gone into it in a couple of cases. I was actually on the phone with Ed today. Ed called me up thinking the hearing was last night. Hey, how'd the hearing go? I said, Ed, you're a little early. It's tonight. So Ed has followed every aspect of this project, and he knows everything that's being done here. We've defined every size of creek, every elevation.
man, yeah.
I've been here maybe 70 times with Ed, every single square foot of this and beyond.
Okay, thanks. James has a question?
Yeah, just one comment.
Yes, I have.
James Saboni
sorry.
has first.
Very comprehensive investigation and report, but I was just wondering what the plans are to prevent invasive species, Phragmites, from recolonizing near the Spartina.
Well, the one good thing about this is if the tide gate is maintained and the elevation of 2.4 of water elevation is maintained, it will be nearly impossible for Phragmites to grow under those conditions. This is beyond anything that they can handle unless they really change their genetic makeup, because they're actually going to be underwater for multiple hours a day by about 1.5 feet. They just don't grow in those saltwater conditions. That's part of the reason we designed this project. A lot of times when you do a salt marsh restoration project, you design a project to grow both Spartina alterniflora, which is low marsh, which lives deeper in the water, and the high marsh, which a lot of what Romney is Spartina patens, that's higher in the tide elevation, and it only sees salt water sometimes 5 times a month. This marsh will see 1.5 feet of water twice a day. It's not going to grow here. But the areas they're not grading on the edges to keep a buffer from the railroad, buffer from private properties, there's going to probably be thick as ever still on those edges. We're not touching that.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, may I, Andy? I just want to ask a question in regards to the land between Oak Island and Riverside, behind the barrier beach. It's going back to nature. Do you work on that?
I'm not, in honesty, totally familiar with where you're talking about. I think you may be talking...
Back in the Statter House.
Between Oak
Back
Island
of
Street,
Revere Beach.
the Point of Pines, the
Okay.
Boulevard, and 1A.
Yeah.
This project, I've actually been there, I've looked at it.
Yeah,
This
it is.
project is not touching that, but it actually has the potential with further investigation, because actually all those areas used to be salt marsh years ago, obviously. There's the
We know that.
potential of some restoration there, but this is not directly affecting it.
Well, what I'm going to ask you, as long as you're involved with the city of Revere with all of these, that does not have tidal flow in there. And that's why it's going back to nature. So, just a thought, if you could get it to go back to tidal flow, you're going to get rid of an awful lot of flood water for those people that are on the boulevard.
Well,
Because it'll go back and forth and so forth, and you might dredge there. That's not ACEC. So you don't have to go through all that there for permits and so forth.
one thing I've suggested numerous times to both the Department of Public Works and the Planning Department is this is actually just maybe 20% of the potential upstream of this tide gate. The city of Revere actually has extensive more potential to create more flood storage, as you're referring to, in many of these areas upstream of it, create much more salt marsh, reduce fires, so there's much more potential here. I'll agree with you. I've actually looked at it, and it's in the back of our mind. So the EPA, my agency, and the state are well aware of the future potential here, and you can be rest assured that when questions crop up about future areas, we say Revere maybe has potential for additional projects if they're interested.
Well, there are pipes that go through. There's no doubt about that. But most of the time, they're plugged. So I can see, and I won't be around for in the future, they're going to be building condominiums there because it's going back to nature from Riverside right back. They're growing trees down there, and that was compensatory storage. And I was just wondering if this couldn't be part of that project to get rid of all that sediment and put it back to nature. And it would help the people that are on the other side, back along the boulevard. because that's their backyard there. Well, there's a right-of-way that goes through for the electric company. But you're not going to have anything to do with that part.
Not at this point.
Okay. Just keep us in mind.
Absolutely, and then I'm going to keep coming up here to see how it plays out and look for future opportunities to work with the city to do additional work.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Ann?
Yes, thank you. I don't have a question, sir, but I do have a comment. Most of my fellow colleagues here have asked some of the questions that entered my mind. But the comment I have is that I feel I have a lot of comfort in knowing that you mentioned the fact that you will be monitoring the project. That's comforting to know. And I have to add another compliment to Joe Maglione. Finding out that he's been involved with this is good to hear, and there's no doubt that you have one of the best around. I have a lot of confidence in his ability. And you paid him a compliment, and I just want to add an extra one. Thank you very much for your time.
Anybody else? Anybody, any other questions? Anybody in the audience that's either in favor or against this project? The only question I have less is because of where the project's located, there weren't a lot of abutters that were notified or people that would be impacted, particularly on a couple of streets on Oak Island and the Grove side. You're going to be doing any outreach there? You know, it's going to be a lot of trucks for a little bit.
That better?
Yeah, much better.
Tor Helgeson, the proponent, KHB Venture. We will be working with Frank and DPW personnel to, when certainly well in advance of when we anticipate doing this, to
Okay, good.
let them know what it is, and because it's really our only way in and out of there.
Yep, okay. Thanks, Tom.
So, but we've discussed that with Frank already.
Okay,
But
yeah, in case
we
anybody
will be
watching
reaching
this
out.
has any questions about it, as long as there is some outreach, I think that should work. So what is the will of the commission on this? I've prepared orders of conditions for both the NRD and the RAM project. They're pretty much a standard order of conditions.
I so move, Mr. Chairman. that the
We're going to
order
need
provisionally-
separate motions for each one.
Okay.
So it'd be a motion for DEP file number 0610632.
I'll second it.
Let me
Wait.
finish, Joe.
Go ahead. Do what you have to do.
Okay.
Andy, is there a stipulation that they let us know where the location is?
We can do that.
Where they put the bills that they're taking out?
We have to be up.
Well, let's see what they say.
So you'd like the proponent to submit copies of correspondence, bills of ladings, things of that nature, or just the repository? Yep.
Someone answer that phone.
What site location?
So a notification to the Revere Conservation Commission.
Andy, just one more question. I think I read that, was that filled already, analyzed for any bad components? Yeah. Okay. Very good, thank you.
We want to make sure that we have the right, more recent results that disposal facilities will
Thank you.
accept.
So it'll be examined properly, right?
That's right.
Okay, so.
Could we talk about maybe adding some condition to follow up on recolonization of salt marsh
Okay.
plants
Yeah, I
after
think
a
that's
growing
within our
season or
purview.
two? Yeah.
And who would be able to do that less?
In terms of,
Well, I understand you have a contract that goes so far. What Daniel's asking about is follow-up on recolonization and reporting regarding that.
So
We're not anticipating any recolonization.
right. So let me clarify. So you're claiming, and I trust the science, that Phragmites won't be growing in these areas, but depending on any obstacles that you encounter in this project, unforeseen or unexpected, there's a chance that Phragmites could recolonize, especially because it's going to be maintained on the perimeter adjacent to this project. So just some follow-up on the work that shows that Phragmites hasn't recolonized 60% of the project area, which would sort of be not what we're looking for, just to confirm that the intent of the project is realized.
But frag control is only one intent.
Right.
That's just one intent. There's over a dozen benefits.
Right, and I'm not questioning any of the other benefits. I mean, you could also follow up and look at sediment flow and erosion of the channels. I think that would also be something to look at in a follow-up. But it's just the plans, as stated, they have this project and then it ends, and there's no stipulation for, okay, this channel that we dredged, maybe the slopes were too steep and it just now it's just an open basin and there's no channel. So I think there just needs to be some accountability for this project going forwards to know that the work that you've described, which is great, is actually realized as you describe it.
let me just speak to one aspect of it. We will need a certificate of compliance once the project is done, and we'll need to demonstrate that it was done according to the plans that we've talked about. So certainly at that stage, we will come back and...
When you say you need it less, that to me doesn't have a lot of strength. It's not like it's a private property that's going to be built on and it's going to be transferred in the future. You know, when we do that on a piece of private property, somebody's building something, they're not going to get an occupancy certificate unless we issue a certificate of compliance. But there is really no hold that we have on a project like this.
Okay.
You know, what happens if, you know, you do the project, it's fine, 3 years expire, you go by, the order expires because you didn't need to request an extension. Nothing will happen. So as far as certificate of compliance, to me, that's not a strong
In this particular case?
reason.
I can see. Since it is the city's property, I see what you're saying.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, we get people coming after 20 years looking for certificates of compliance because they need it to sell their house, but there's no reason for the proponent to need it in this case necessarily.
So do you have a form of a condition that you'd want to put on it, Daniel?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe 2 annual report. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, Eric.
I'll at least speak for the component of the project that relates to the National Marine Fisheries Service, though they're almost the same. As a project of this nature, as I'd mentioned before, some sort of basic monitoring plan is entirely legitimate. I agree with you, and it frankly should have one. And you know, if need be, we'll, you know, whether it's some transects showing plant growth 3 year. I mean, typically some follow-up monitoring on any wetland mitigation project is usually 2 or 3 years. I don't expect anything of significance here, but if it makes certainly the commission, as I'd mentioned, I want to know as much as you do what the results here, and I think for the public record, there should be some follow-up. It's not going to be a site that's going to be monitored for 10, 15 years, but just a standard, what happened? And it's not even going to be, it won't even be hard to monitor this site. It's going to be completely flat, one species at most. Could be a combination of photo stations and some estimates of plant assemblages, meaning percent cover. There's not much more you're going to do here, but I think that would be, if that would be my suggestion, would be some photo stations for the record, and some estimates of percent cover of vegetation on the marsh plain. Very simple, relatively inexpensive, but that tells the story, as well as an indicator of any Phragmites in the footprint and percent cover of that species as well. I'm going for close to zero, but you never know.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
Very good.
That satisfy you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think someone else mentioned maybe just an elevation, a few elevations, just to verify that it matches with the plan.
Would you be willing to support that, though?
Sorry,
Is it-
elevations?
What Eric had mentioned would be photo stations, which I presume is just picking locations and taking photos there over time. Estimations of plant cover percentage-wise, and getting a few shots
For how
over
long?
a period of time. 2 years beyond finish? 3 years?
And elevations?
I mean, that could be, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be done every year, but just post-project.
I'm not sure elevations would show anything, because we will be taking elevation shots at the end of construction to verify that we made the requisite cuts.
No, that's what I'm referring to, yeah.
What's that?
That, yes, that.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
all that,
As part of the construction project, we have to document that we
Sure.
that we achieve the requisite elevation, so we get the 13,000 yards of storage. That'll be submitted in the construction completion report with the new as-built survey.
okay, so,
But if
so,
you're talking about elevations in subsequent years, I'm not sure what the benefit of it is.
no. I think maybe two separate reports, a post-construction report that is delivered to us, and then a three-year
Absolutely.
follow-up of,
Post-construction report, absolutely.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so post-construction report, I presume that was being planned anyways.
That's correct. We want to make sure that our contractor is giving us what we're paying them to give us, so we're going to take the surveys to make sure the requisite cut elevations are achieved.
Andy,
Yes, sir.
may I address this gentleman that just spoke?
Yes, would you say your name again and your association? I didn't quite get it.
I'm sorry, first name is Tor.
Could you spell that, please?
T-H-O-R.
Yeah, would you come to the microphone,
sorry.
please, Tor? And your last name's Ellison?
Helgeson, H-E-L.
Turn it on.
And it just went out, yeah.
H-E-L?
Helgeson.
Thank you. And you're with?
Company is DeMaximus, and I'm
DeMaximus.
the representative for KHB Venture.
Okay. Joe?
Well, the reason why Dan keeps mentioning about the elevation, you're looking for it from a perspective of removing a certain amount of fill. But as it's already been determined, the elevation has to be proper in order for the salt marsh to grow and the Phragmites to be dead.
That's correct.
Now, just in case this prediction is a little bit off, when we monitor it, or when you people monitor it in a year or two, you may find out that you didn't go deep enough. I mean, you're just basically, I won't say guessing, but you're using an established number to try to figure out just how deep you have to go in order to get the Phragmites out and the salt marsh in. Correct? Okay, now, the way things go, it may not end up being exactly correct. As far as the tidal flow, and other factors. So, if after, and this is what Dan was getting to, after a few years, come to find out that there isn't enough flushing going on there, the elevation should have been a little bit deeper, the Phragmites is starting to grow back because it's not getting, the marsh is not getting covered enough by the salt, then in future projects, we'll know that and go a little deeper or remove more. Or maybe that's even too much to remove. I don't know, but there should be some monitoring. And I think that's what Dan, one of the things that Dan was mentioning, and the necessity to have something like this?
I think as far as the elevations that are proposed here, I think there's enough experience now in the marsh itself over the years that was able to determine that. That was one of the things behind my question about Ed Reiner from the EPA, because Ed's been all over the marsh for 30 years that I know of. And I know they did some salt marsh restoration, I think up in Saugus at one point. I think a little's been done in Revere already. You know, Revere's motivation has been mostly flood control, especially after the blizzard of '78, which was a historic record of flood.
I just want to point out one thing I should have pointed out before. Our project has been through review by MEPA, Mass Environmental Policy Act. We've received good, positive comment letters from the Division of Marine Fisheries, from Natural Heritage, from Coastal Zone Management, from the Army Corps, from all of the key agencies, and they have good professionals on their staff who review these type of things. And we're very confident, but I understand you want some assurances, and that's reasonable.
I mean, I think if the elevations are brought to what they are shown here, I think there shouldn't be any problems. So, but I think it's just, we should do our due diligence and have a 3-year follow-up, as we discussed.
Yes, Eric.
Eric Hutchins, National Marine Fisheries Service. I'm thinking this through here, and I want exactly what you're saying as well. So there's two pieces here. One is you want an assurance that the elevations that are proposed are actually delivered. That's one thing. They want it from a contracting standpoint, but we all want it to get that maximum flood storage. Insofar as, is it the absolute perfect elevation? That's the best science that we have with all of the people we could gather is targeting these elevations. So one way to maybe cover this is this permit, this issue, this notice of intent, order of conditions dictates that you build these elevations. Because I know that a way an order of conditions unfortunately can work is someone can actually do less than they proposed because they're still within their permit. Do you follow what I'm saying? What I'm hearing is potentially you want to make sure you get what they said they were going to do, because they wouldn't be breaking the order of conditions by definition if they didn't go to the elevations they proposed or we proposed. So one way to cover that is to put explicitly in the permit your order of conditions that you will show that you actually removed right to these conditions that you proposed, not less.
Yes, Eric.
I'd like to make another, just another comment to the commission members. I embrace and want Conservation Commission interest, short-term and long-term in this. By all means, any questions that come to you, I'm open to you anytime. And I mean that. I mean, I want your questions. I want you to care about this project. and I want you to want more of it for the benefits for the city of Revere and fisheries. So by all means, I'm not here just to get a permit, walk away. I don't say that offensively to them. They just have a job to do. I'm here long-term for the city of Revere in this support role. So as this project goes through its manifestations, it'll take time, and then it'll be following it. If any of you have questions, by all means, I'm available. I think my contact information is in there, but Frank, Joe, they've got my telephone number anytime. And I'm here probably average.
I don't think we've ever met, Eric, but I've seen your name over a whole
Same-
bunch of emails.
Same here, and I've done a lot of work in Chelsea as
CCM
well.
and stuff,
So
yeah.
I just, and Saugus. So I just make that open to all commission members. If anytime you've got a question, you can call me up personally, even independent of your permit process.
And your presentation has been great. Eric? Sir, your presentation has been great. Thank you.
Okay, so I've written 4 conditions we'll put on each of these, 4 additional conditions. First one is notification of the Revere Conservation Commission in regards to name and location of disposal site. Next one is post-construction report to be submitted to the Revere Conservation Commission. Third one, 3-year follow-up with annual observations by photo station, percentage of vegetation cover with salt marsh plantings, 2 transects with elevations planned for such to be submitted to the Revere Concom for approval. Fourth condition, confirmation of proposed elevations to be submitted to the Revere Conservation Commission by registered surveyor upon project completion. Does that satisfy the concerns that were brought up? Okay, so we had a motion on the floor for DEP file number 0610632, which is the NRD Salt Marsh Restoration, by member Vincent Camerata, seconded by Vice Chair Joseph James.
And
To
that's with
close
the
the
act-
public hearing
That's good.
and issue order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next one we'll take up is DEP file number 0610633.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Les. Which is the RAM mitigation, salt marsh restoration. Do I have a motion? Motion to close public hearing and issue order.
I'll second if no one has, Mr. Chairman, unless someone did. Someone second?
06106, second by Vice Chair Joe James, second by Vincent Camerata. All those in favor? Any opposed? So voted.
Thank you again.
You're welcome, Les.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make copies of these and send the signed originals to you, Les. Okay. Yeah, I'll get them filed with DEP. Oh, gotta get his, I just want to find out, Magdalena, if there's a lot of people here for your project, or are they here for the rail trail? If they're here for the rail trail, are the people here interested in the rail trail? I'd like to see public meeting. Or are you interested in the sewer projects? Did you get notice for the sewer projects? Okay. All right, we'll go with the sewer projects then. Magdalena, come on up. I just wanted to make sure if there was a lot of people here for the rail trail.
Where's the best place to set up the plants?
You can do it in the same spot where he had the screen.
No, I like to point at it.
You like to point at it? Yeah, then put it up here. They'll put the cameras on it, people in the audience. Why don't you face it to the audience, Magdalena, and we'll see it on the camera. We've also got the documents you gave us, which the people in the audience don't. Signatures. Okay, moving on to the next items. These are public hearings by the City of Revere, notice of intents for DEP file 0610634, 0635, 0636. I'd like to take these all together as one. Thanks, Magdalena. It's various sewer work, so with the assent of the commission, take all the public hearings up at once. Do we have a motion? Motion by Member Ann Raponi. Second by Vice Chair Joseph James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The floor is yours, Magdalena. Thank you.
My name is Magdalena Lofstedt. I'm a wetland scientist with CDM Smith. And with me tonight...
Speak into the microphone, Magdalena.
My name is Magdalena Lofstedt. I'm a wetland scientist with CDM Smith. And with me tonight I have Mike Nelson of CDM Smith. He's the project engineer, in case you have some technical questions. We filed 3 separate notice of intents for phase 3 of the city-wide sewer system rehabilitation. And I don't know if you recall, we were here about a year ago for phase 2, which consisted of just one contract, which included manhole rehabilitation, spot repair, and cured in place pipelining, CIPP lining. That project, phase 2, construction was started in last spring, and it should be completed this coming spring. And phase 1 included 2 separate contracts, and those have been completed. The City of Revere is under an administrative consent order and a consent decree by US EPA and Mass DEP to reduce the infiltration inflow rates and to address the sanitary sewer overflows. So these contracts is part of the program that the city is mandated to develop and implement. So I'll start with the contract WW-001, which is the sewer system rehabilitation. Oh, they should have one of those you can walk around with.
Excuse me?
It should be like one that you could...
That you can move with.
Yeah, like clipped to your collar or something. I'm not as high-tech as the previous applicant. So the sewer system rehabilitation will
You've
occur...
got somebody with you, Magdalena?
I do.
Yeah, can they stand at the board and point out the areas you're talking about?
Sure. If he knows where they are. So the sewer system rehabilitation will take place in 3 flow meter areas of the city, and it's in flow meter areas 1, 8, and 10. And the reason we're here, all the work is within existing streets. The reason we had to file a notice of intent and the reason we're here tonight is because some of the work is within a 100-foot buffer zone to the coastal beach or bordering vegetated wetland, or within 100-year floodplain, or within the buffer zone under the local city ordinance, because they have a 100-foot buffer zone to the 100-year floodplain. So there will be no work outside its existing streets or street right-of-ways. So I'm just going to go over. The work will consist of, like I said, it's spot replacement, where actually a section of the pipe will be replaced, and manhole rehabilitation. And in the notice of intent, we actually provided a couple of tables for you to look at. And there's only 4 locations where spot replacement will take place within areas under the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. And it's within Winthrop. Actually, you can point those out. It would be on that map there. It would be on Winthrop Parkway. Yeah. And then Winthrop Avenue. Yeah. Actually, yeah. And that's an 8-inch diameter PVC pipe that will be installed. The trench will be about 8 feet wide and about 8 to 10 feet deep. And like I said, it's all within the existing city streets. So we don't even anticipate the need to install any erosion controls in those locations.
So
And then
just to clarify, Magdalena, you're showing along Winthrop Ave, along with the Parkway, it's a section of Winthrop Ave that's opposite Short Beach, the lower part of Winthrop Ave, past Crescent Ave. And on Winthrop Parkway, it's on the easterly side of the parkway. Ford's Village would be behind it. So, just so people know, because people aren't going to know 10 to whatever numbers you assign. They're going to know by the neighborhoods. Along the beach in Beachmont. The area is not a jurisdiction. Go right.
So moving on, for the manhole rehabilitation, there's about there's about 174 manholes that will need to be rehabilitated, and most of that work consists of work within the existing manhole. It requires no excavation. Only 3 out of those 174 manholes will actually require excavation, because we need to replace the frame and cover. They were paved over, so we have to raise the manhole up. And I'll show you where those are, unless you want to. One is S129 on Winthrop Avenue. It's all going to be on the FM1. It's kind of, yeah, it's down low, yeah. Yeah. And then the S204, which also is within Winthrop Avenue. Yeah, a little bit further south. And then on Broad Sound Avenue, S83.
I just have a question about the maps you provided, where they list the base bid, alternative 1, alternative 2, alternative 3, etc. What are those, like, you may do, or are you planning to do all of that?
I can answer that. Yeah, that's based on cost. We'll do, once the bid prices come in, the city will choose...
Can you talk into the microphone, please?
Sorry. Mike Nelson from CDM Smith. Once the bid prices come in, the city will choose what they are financially able to complete as part of the budget. So that's based on bid prices. So we broke it up so that at least portions of the work, additional portions of the work can be done.
So we should take into consideration all of the alternatives that are listed?
Well, we included all of them in the notice of intent, so kind of like worst case scenario. So we don't have to come back for an amendment or best case.
Just one question. On the funding, the city responsible for all this funding, or we're going to get some mitigation?
This is a SRF, state revolving funding. Is it 100%? Yes. I'm not sure if it's 100% of state funding,
Yeah.
but there's a good portion of it is state funded.
Yeah,
I don't know the exact.
It's not state funding, it's loans, Benny.
Loan?
Very low interest loans.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the state may forgive some of the money, but it won't be a lot of it compared to
Okay.
what's going to be spent.
All right, thanks, Andy. Thank you, man.
So the last portion of the contract one is the cured in place pipelining, where it's actually going to be about 29,300 linear feet of the existing sewer pipe will be lined, and access to the sewer will be through existing manholes, and that's also shown on the plans that were provided in the notice of intent. So I don't know if you want any more detail. Do you want me to go over how that's done?
Can you just speak to the follow-up inspection of the cured in place lining?
Follow-up inspection.
I know, as part of our specifications, we have warranty inspections that are done 1 year later. And if any of the liners do not adhere to the specifications of the job, they are redone, no additional cost.
Okay, so the contract remains open up to 1 year.
Yeah, that's written in the documents there. There's a 1 year warranty inspection.
Thank you.
On your linings being done, I presume, to deal with infiltration.
That is correct.
Will there be any follow-up as far as flow measurements to see that you've captured the infiltration that you're planning on, or prevented it?
I don't know the
Decrease,
specifics on
wet
the
weather
flow
flows.
metering. I'm not the lead engineer on this particular project, but I do know the city has an extensive flow metering, ongoing flow metering program, and there will be a way to measure the success of the program. There will be, I just don't know the specifics of it.
And
Is this-
the reason you want to get out the groundwater flows into the system is
Because-
particularly during wet weather, to prevent sanitary sewer overflows that have historically taken place in many parts of the city.
Correct. To mitigate health threats, public nuisance threats, and also it's incredibly expensive to treat wastewater, so we don't want to treat any water that's clean and mix it with sewage.
Will there be any additional sewers put in?
Not as part of this project, right? This is strictly rehab.
Yeah, it's all rehab.
So any new sewer that put in is a replacement of a piece of sewer that is so far deteriorated it cannot be rehabilitated. Those are the spot repairs.
Another question. I noticed that there's a sewer down in front of the yacht club down in the Pines. I've never, ever seen the cover taken off of it. Are you people going to clean those up? Or?
Are you talking a sewer, or are you talking catch basin, Joe?
I guess, yeah, you're right. But regardless, you're going to have anything to do with that, clearing those out?
You're talking about catch basin cleaning?
Yeah.
That would not be a part of this contract. This contract will be bid on and awarded to a private company
Okay.
that'll specialize in this work.
All right.
And catch basin cleaning will most likely fall under the jurisdiction of the DPW.
All right, thank you.
For any of the residents that are here that received notice, what effects would they expect? I did speak to one individual down on the Parkway that called me, and what I told them, there would be some period of time during the workday, particularly when you're doing lining. They're not going to bypass sewer flows.
Depending on the amount of flow in the sewer, the size of the sewer, whether it's a major main or if it's just a side branch for a small residential street, there could be bypassing or there
Yeah,
might
even
not.
if there's bypassing, if there's people connected to that section you're lining.
Yeah,
With
they'll
the
have,
house- With the building services, they're not going to have sewer service.
correct, for a limited amount of time, they will not have sewer service. They will be well informed of that. It'll be a requirement of the contract, so they will be contacted on official city letterhead with times of operations and times that they should not be using their wastewater facilities. It is a very brief period of time because it's limited how much time you have to work with the lining material. So they can't, shut your house down all day.
One of our members, Vincent Camerata, was affected by the Goldie Street, Bruno Street pump station work. That his house was transferred over from
That's right.
a pump in the house to
With no
the
charge.
pump station.
Yeah.
But no charge,
That's what
yes.
I was gonna
no
ask that
charge.
question, if
But
they
as far
fight-
as disruption, Vinnie, you
No,
didn't have
nothing.
much in the way of
It's been fine.
disruption, and it was a similar type of
It's been
situation.
fine.
Yeah, it's a similar process. Anytime you're pretty much taking an existing sewer service or network out of service to do work on it, the same things have to happen in terms of bypass pumping, notification, disruption to home service.
You're not out to bid yet.
We are not out to bid yet on any of the three projects, or we
When?
are, the projects have been advertised, the bids have not been opened.
Okay, project manager, when are you anticipating construction start, and what's the duration?
I don't know what the order of the three contracts will go out, but the rehab projects can start immediately, as soon as administrative paperwork is completed. There is no certain time of the year that those need to be done. They can be done at any time.
But
So,
I'm also
I anticipate-
wondering about times of the year where you're likely to have an event at your house. I was superintendent of public works here in Revere in the late 80s, and I used to take Thanksgiving off because it was the worst day as far as sewer backups, because everybody was home. People don't go away typically for Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. I mean, if the work is carried out in the late spring, Easter
Yeah,
might
you
be
get
in there.
Easter, March 31st.
Typically, the crews won't work on holidays, so there won't be any bypass pumping or shutdowns on a holiday. If it's a federal holiday, that they're not going to work on it. So, but also in the contractor, everyone's emergency contact info, so DPW stuff in there, and the crews will be working very closely with city officials.
Yeah, I know you had a good resident engineer, resident inspector on the job down by Vinnie's house that was very accessible and responsible.
We appreciate that.
Just one more question, talking about the illicit tie-ins.
Yep.
What's gonna happen to these people? There are some illicit tie-ins. There's been a question of who's gonna pay for that if they have to go through serious expense. I mean, I think even the council were talking about it. If a person has an illicit tie-in and he's gonna be forced to correct it, who's gonna pay for it? Do you people know anything about that?
Oh, I know all about it. That's a large part of my job is an engineer trying to remove II. That is, I hope
He's
this.
not so much talking about II as he's talking about illicit connections from sanitary connections at home
Some
into
pump,
storm drainage.
some pump connections.
Well,
that are
some
going in.
pumps
Yeah.
not as bad. It's
Right.
the sewer that's tied into
Yeah, sewer
storm
into the drain.
drain.
Yeah, we also deal with that.
That
is a city-
$3,000 to $5,000 to lay a new sewer in to connect to
Correct.
sanitary if the sanitary's there.
Yeah, it's definitely an expense. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm passing the buck, but that is definitely a city issue. CDM does not determine who pays that bill. That's going to be a city bylaw. It's going to be one of these things where does the city own the main and the homeowner owns the lateral, or does the city own to the property line out?
On
Those are all
water,
Revere bylaws.
The city owns to the property line. On sewer, the homeowner owns right to the main.
Yep, so
And
that,
that's pretty typical in most communities.
that'll have to be worked out internally with Revere.
Yeah, I don't know how many of them they've come up with at this point, but,
It's quite an issue, you know that, Danny.
oh, yeah, I've dealt with it.
It's an issue in every
Chelsea,
town. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that is the second contract,
Yes.
is to identify and remove the illicit connections to the drainage system.
So once they get a handle on how many there are,
Right. They'll be able to decide who's gonna pay for it, even help the homeowners to pay part of it somehow, all right.
yeah,
That is-
that's up to the city folks to decide.
I have a question. Is this all cured in place liner, or will the contractor have an option to use different technologies?
We spec cured in place liner or equal. So they would have to prove that an alternate technology would work as well as what we know CIPP, cured in
And
place pipe.
Is there an option for how the curing process is completed?
I'm not 100% positive, but I do know our spec generally says it shall be either water cured or steam cured. And I'm not sure which one this particular spec says. As I said, I'm not the lead engineer on these two contracts. I'm the lead on the pump station contract.
Yeah, the city's been doing quite a bit of lining on its own. Donnie Goodwin, Superintendent of Public Works, been doing a lot with National Water Main.
Yep.
Based on stuff that they've done quite a while.
So no complaints about resin, odors from the resin, or any of that stuff?
Yeah, I can't speak to the resident engineers that were on site during the construction, but I haven't heard anything about complaining. I mean, it's a
I don't know
pretty.
if Nick knows anything.
Yeah, do you know of any?
About complaints, Nick Rice from the city engineer.
Nick Rystrom, city engineer. Can you repeat that question, please?
When they use cured in place lining, there is a concern about odor. It's about the chemicals they use, the resin they use, and the cured in place lining as far as generating odors. There has been complaints about that in the past.
We do get some. Very few, I think. Most of the residents, I think, are understanding in that regard, but there are some that we get.
I know you got to get a permit with MWRA when you're doing it.
Correct.